Joining us now is Steve Moore. He's the editorial board member and senior economics writer at the Wall Street Journal. Also the author of Who's the Fairest of Them All? The Truth About Opportunity Taxes and Wealth in America. Taxes and wealth. Not a whole lot of wealth going on right now in America. Stephen Moore, thanks for joining us today.
Good morning, guys.
Hey, good morning. So we're still coming off sequester, of course, and we're still discussing it. Is it true that the president completely botched this public? I mean, it's the one of the few public relations botches that he's done where he just so oversold the ramifications of sequester. Is he politically in trouble now with that narrative, or does he still hold the cards where he can inflict pain if he chooses to do so?
No, look, I think you've got it right that this is a president who has such a golden touch politically, but you just botched it. I think that's exactly right. Look, the last 2 or 3 weeks, the Republicans have had very good weeks because the president keeps going around the country talking about, planes falling out of the sky and schools closing down and opening up prisons. Meanwhile, people are saying, wait a minute, what about all the waste? Why aren't you cutting, the wine tasting conferences and the honeybee research and all of this stuff? And, it's caused a big, I think the tables have really been flipped in the last few weeks. Now Americans are saying, hell yes, there's $50 billion of waste we can cut out of this budget. There's multiples more of that. And so, I just saw a story this morning. The president, the White House is now saying, well, we might have to cut out hours for Yosemite and Yellowstone National Park. And again, people are going to say, wait a minute, why aren't you cutting out the waste in the budget? Why are you cutting the most sensitive things? So the answer to your question is yes. For the first time, I think the Republicans are on the offensive here, and Obama has a real political problem on his hands.
It's in that environment that some Republicans in the Senate want to take up the issue of Obamacare once again,
right,
and during the continuing resolution decide whether or not they can get it defunded. Now, you and I know that in a democratically controlled Senate, that's not going to prevail. But is it a fight worth having?
Oh, yes, it is, Brian. Look, this law gets more and more unpopular by the day. I was listening to your show a couple weeks ago. You reported that now for a family of, I think it was a family of four, the average premiums on an insurance policy are now $20,000.
Yeah.
Now, look, how can the average family afford to pay for a middle-class family paying $20,000 for health insurance? Gee, Brian, I kind of remember when we had this debate on Obamacare in 2009 and 2010, the president, remember that famous phrase, we're going to bend the cost curve down for health care. Well, exactly the opposite has happened. I think the Republicans ought to go very much on the offensive. Now, you're right, they're not going to get this through the Senate, but it's a good fight to have, especially because the president keeps saying, look, I'm willing to be reasonable on cutting the entitlement costs. If you want to be reasonable, you want to be serious about getting these spiraling entitlement costs, multi-trillion-dollar deficits entitlements under control, step one has got to be repeal Obamacare, because you're never going to get the costs under control if you put 20 million more people on Medicaid, which is exactly what Obamacare does.
Steve Moore, the jobs numbers came out Friday afternoon. Apparently 236,000 new jobs in February. The unemployment rate is down to 7.7%. Of course, that's not the real number because it doesn't take into account all the people who have left the workforce. But are we moving in the right direction, and is this a validation of Obama's policies, or is this really just a reaction to the fiscal cliff tax cuts that came in on January? Well, not the tax cuts, but the retaining of the tax policy.
The economy is definitely picking up, no question about it. I think we're going to get a decent first quarter growth rate. By the way, up from 0.1% in the fourth quarter, so it could hardly be worse than what we got last quarter. But yeah, you're talking to business now; they're feeling a little bit more optimistic. I think maybe it's because even though we're continuing to put millstones around the neck around the businesses, we're not doing it quite at the pace that we used to be doing it. So yeah, I think the economy is doing well, but I'm still skeptical of whether this is sustainable. I mean, let's not forget, we just passed two massive tax increases, the Obamacare tax increases and the fiscal cliff tax increases. You've got a lot of the uncertainty with Obamacare. I've talked to a lot of people who own fast food restaurants and Burger Kings and Red Lobsters and Applebee's, and they say they can't hire workers right now because of Obamacare. You hire somebody more than 30 hours a week, you got to pay them very expensive health care. If you hire more than 50 workers, all of these new mandates come into effect. So we had this term that we used in the Wall Street Journal called the 49ers. Those are businesses that are not hiring the 50th worker to avoid these Obama. No, it's happening. Really, we laugh about it, but it's happening. Businesses are not hiring more than 50 workers, and the other phenomenon that's going on is a lot of businesses are not hiring workers for 30 hours a week or more. They're hiring them for 25 or 28 hours. Now,
you talk about your unintended consequences.
Exactly. And by the way, how do you feed your family? How do you pay your bills if you've only got a part-time job?
Right. But they're forcing them into part-time. The question then is what happens going forward as we keep getting a push. The president wants to continue increasing taxes. He also wants to keep spending. He keeps saying that we must invest. We must invest. Push is coming to shove here. Wall Street seems to be responding okay to the current political climate, but is there something looming?
Look, here's my point. I think we should be growing about 4 or 5%. We've never had the big boom out of this recession that you normally get. We just never have had it. I think we might get 2% growth this year. That's okay. It's not recession. But I guess my feeling is we should be growing much faster. We should have jobs. We had 225,000 jobs last month. Hooray, good number. We should be seeing that now for the next 2 or 3 years, and I doubt it's going to happen.
All right. Steve Moore, thanks so much for joining us. It's always good to have you. It's always nice to have smart people join us. It's very rare, actually. And no, I'm kidding. All of our guests are smart.
Thanks, Steve. Good to have you.
Thank you. Thanks for calling me smart. You made my day.